Many of you are angry with me for saying misandry is not feminism is because you lack emotional awareness, you lack emotional intelligence. The most important skill for us to develop as grown adults is to learn how to sit with our discomfort, experience our emotions, understand what they are, unpack them, and regulate them. I'm not saying to silence our collective suffering for the sake of mitigating men's discomfort. I'm saying we need to all be grown adults because whether or not we like it, children are on the internet, as evidenced by my comment section. I understand how easy and addictive it is to look at my pain and say, that's the world's responsibility because they're the ones that hurt me, but that is not conducive to the actual mission of dismantling systems of oppression. We have to face the bitter reality that if we both understand a culture of hatred for women has perpetuated violence on girls and women, that a culture of hatred for men will probably perpetuate violence on girls and women, and boys also. I think what I'm realizing is so many of you think you're against oppression, but you're actually just against being oppressed, because being against oppression requires us to do the dirty and difficult work of looking inward and deconstructing all of the ways that the systems of oppression have trained me to subconsciously uphold those systems of oppression. That work doesn't feel good. That work requires self-reflection. It requires humility. It feels sometimes very awful and it's very difficult, but it is required of us if we truly believe in dismantling the systems of oppression. That means thinking long and hard about how our behavior affects culture, affects children, affects the world that we walk in, even when it's inconvenient for us to look inward, even when it doesn't feel good. The reasons.
Let me tell you why I disagree. Because you might be shocked, but I think she did not eat the way she thought she ate it. This comment she liked said, I will never forget when my husband told me if we want feminism to work, we're going to need men, specifically men who understand it. And it filled me with so much rage at the time, but I knew it was true and I understand it even more now. Boo! 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 Feminism does not need men to work. Systems of oppression need all of us as a collective working together. Centering men as the hero of the movement as if the system didn't put them as our oppressor in the first place? No. So she tried. They all try. They all try so hard to sit here and they don't know how to decenter men as a gender. So now men go, white men do this. Have you ever heard a white man on the internet say this? Well, blacks, forgive me, I'm quoting a racist. Blacks should be grateful to us because without us, we would still have racism or slavery. Men, white men, women should be grateful to us because if women didn't, if we didn't give you the right to vote, you wouldn't have had it. That's this rhetoric. This is why men get on the internet and tell minority, marginalized people they should be grateful for them because they gave us the right to exist. Hello? Why are you taking it away from us? Like, that's what I'm saying. This TikToker with all of her good attempts, I think she has good intentions, but I think she runs the risk of missing the thing that I'm like, okay, so yes, misandry emotionally plays a role in our lives, though theoretically and as a political movement makes no fucking sense. Emotionally, it makes sense because it's reactive to patriarchy. Misandry wouldn't exist without patriarchy, okay? But if she's liking comments that say, right, like, oh, my husband knew better than me. My husband knew if we want feminism to work, we're going to need men. Then what are we doing? Like, what's actually happening? Okay, now we're centering men as the liberators of our movements, as if they don't uphold a system that oppresses us, as if they're not voting for men who constantly oppress us. So no, okay? Then this guy is all over the internet right now. I've honestly decided to skip most of his videos because I did not find it as compelling as everybody else, but his videos are going pretty viral. And my Discord also asked me to talk about this. He made one video called There's No Such Thing as Healthy Masculinity and Femininity, a reflection on false binaries, disability, and global wartime politics. And then this one was a response to him. And then this one is Why Are Men So Embarrassing, a critical memoir. I just feels again like another, like I don't love the way he's rising to prominence because you know what I mean? But I thought we could watch some of this together. So let's watch a little bit of this because we're running out of time. And let's watch a little bit of the other one because we're running out of time. Here.
There is no such thing as healthy masculinity or healthy femininity. And that binary thinking is exactly what produces the unhealthy conversation around gender dynamics. I would argue that all of the features we may be tempted to ascribe to the idea of healthy masculinity or healthy femininity, if they are healthy behaviors, then they should be expressed by all humans, regardless of this false gendered binary. To accept the gendered binary is to accept a flattening of your own humanity and your own human capacity. I would also argue that the degree to which you believe and defend these societal expectations around gender are positively correlated with the degree to which you can actually meet these societal expectations. I am a historian with disabilities. I have cerebral palsy. I am also a historian of disability. I study the history of disabled veterans and veteran care in the United States from the Revolutionary War to World War II. And this has put me in a unique position to examine patriarchal gender ideology through the lens of disability. Through the works of historians like Linda Kerber, I have come to understand that from the very beginning of this country, the understanding of what it meant to be a man was heavily filtered through notions of white Anglo-Saxon Protestantism. Men left the home and did politics. Women stayed in the home and raised politicians. That was the Republican ideal of gender dynamics.
Okay, I want to pause here. Chet says, I feel like if men were socially able to just wear women's clothes or women's wear as women wear men's wear, there would be a lot of conflict between gender binary and mainstream public. First, women are not allowed to wear men's clothes. I don't know where that is possible because I wear men's clothes most of my life and I've never not had flack for it. Two, women are perceived as being able to wear men's clothes because it's more acceptable to want to be a man than it is for a man to want to be a woman, but it barely works. It works mostly for younger women. Ask any butch lesbian out there how much criticism they get for dressing, quote, like a man. Okay, so I think that's one thing I will say. Two, I hear you, but I think we forget that humans are inherently shallow because they're not working to be deeper thinkers. So that means that it will be another form of competition. We see it in queer circles that haven't deconstructed hierarchies where it's like, did you slay? Did you pick it up? Did you do it? Were you good? And yeah, like that is absolutely fun. And we can talk about it in a healthy way, but there's a lot of comparison and comparison is the thief of joy, right? So I think like more or less, I will agree with the superficial message you're sending, but I also disagree with it in practice because I think when we put things into practice, we have to deal with people's insecurities. We have to deal with the fact that we're always trying to show people up and we have to deconstruct ego. We have to really, before deconstructing gender is also about deconstructing ego. It's about realizing like we need to have humility in the way that we show up in life and have humility in the way that we are like properly showing up, right? So like that is kind of how I would think about it, right? Okay, let me skip over really fast to this video. I want to hear this one as well. Why are men so embarrassing? A critical memoir.
And so embarrassing. If you're a man who's chronically online like I am, this is a question you've probably had to think about at least a little bit over the past couple of years. Several think pieces have emerged in recent years detailing young men's apathy and catatonia and women's response to that catatonia. In The Cut's most recent article, Call Her Mommy, Angelina Chapin paints a bleak picture of a generation of men failing to launch, transitioning from one mother figure to the next while draining their partners of their resources and happiness. Simultaneously, these men are receiving toxic messaging from an online cast of ne'er-do-wells, whose rhetoric constantly shifts the blame onto women for men's failures, particularly pointing to women's refusal to adhere to traditional gender roles that render them financially subservient to men. Ever the curious fella that I am, I have been trying desperately to think about what might be causing these volatile social conditions for men. During a recent trip back home, I think I may have found some answers in my own life. But to arrive at those answers, we must first travel back some 2 decades to when yours truly was a newly minted adult. A few days after my 18th birthday, my father walked into my room, interrupted my riveting game of The Sims, and said something akin to, "Son, you are 18 now. You don't need me around here anymore, and I have things I want to do before I die." The following day, he spent $13,000 of money we did not have on a motorcycle for which he did not have a license to ride and set off on his grand journey of self-actualization.
Sheesh.
Surprisingly, he would die a short 2 years later, making
God.
himself a devastating case study in the power of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Fuck. Honestly, that's hard. Damn.
Between his departure from home and his untimely death,
Like, God, nothing is more embarrassing than being the loser parent. I cannot, like, Jesus Christ. That's what I'm saying. Like, why are we pretending like parents aren't losers? Oh my God. I feel for him so bad. Imagine your dad is a loser. Oh my God. That's so embarrassing for the dad, not for the kid. The kid is great. The dad is embarrassing. Jesus.
he made sure to burn every bridge and exhaust every resource he had ever held dear. But there was one moment in particular during his vapid vision quest that speaks to the question of why men are so embarrassing, I think. About a year and a half after my dad left, he filed for divorce from my mother. In the process of serving my mother divorce papers, he also served me. He wanted me to testify in court because he had hoped I would speak to what he saw as the disproportionate contributions to the household maintenance and child rearing between him and my mother. My father always devalued my mother's domestic labor, a job that was uniquely difficult considering I had cerebral palsy and for the first 12 years of my life required constant care. He always viewed his job as more important, and why wouldn't he? My research on the history of disabled veterans has taught me that this country has long culturally celebrated the white male breadwinner as the backbone of Western society. His role as the breadwinner was so important to him that he allowed his work to define his entire identity and earthly purpose. And that there, dear reader, in lies the problem. The process of testifying during my parents' divorce hearing was incredibly traumatic for me at 19 years old. I must admit that I was something of an emotional late bloomer. Years of bullying and periodic schoolyard beatdowns had left me with a deep sense of shame and self-hatred that lingered well into my 20s. That self-hatred was only compounded by having a traditionally hyper-masculine father. My father was tall, athletic, and aggressive, but somehow also capable of being loving and caring when he wanted to be. These qualities stood in stark contrast to me, a boy who stopped growing at the age of 14 and never had that final growth spurt that everybody was so sure would eventually come. I was small, and by the time I was 14, I had already undergone 10 reconstructive surgeries, leaving me timid from years of chronic pain. One thing my father did well, though, and something that I will admit ultimately may have and may will yet save my life, was that in the moments he was around and psychologically present, he was always making sure to tell me how much he loved me and that he was proud of me. He never missed an opportunity to give me a big Belaruski hug, as he called it, every day as he came home from work. These seemingly small gestures meant the world to a young wallflower like myself. Ultimately, I think that behavior, alongside my mother's unbridled optimism and belief in my capabilities, gave me the resolve to keep moving forward. But my father was nothing if not a man of contradictions. He recognized my limitations while at the same time expecting me to live up to the demands of traditional masculinity, something I was ill-equipped to do. One of my earliest memories of him is standing in our family room at 7 years old while he taught me how to box. Now, I know you may be tempted to say everyone should learn to defend themselves, a statement I wouldn't necessarily disagree with. But my father seemed at times to be blind to the fact that I could barely stand on my own 2 feet. Both of my parents, as sad as it is to say, trafficked in some degree of ideas of disability blindness. When I was younger, they insisted I was no different from any other child. I do not blame them. I understand that where they were coming from and what they were trying to do was to build my self-esteem by encouraging me to focus on what I could do rather than what I could not. Unfortunately, they had waded in the waters of disability blindness for far too long, so that at times I think they forgot I was not just like every other kid, and that was okay. This brings us back to my divorce hearing testimony. My father had told his lawyer that my mother was asking for too much financial support in the divorce. He claimed that she was dramatically exaggerating both her needs and my disability in order to drain him of money. My father's lawyer was under the impression that I was hardly disabled at all. Imagine his surprise when I showed up in all my disabled glory. During my testimony, I made the reality clear. I spoke to how valuable my father's financial contributions were, but I also made sure to let the court know how important my mother's domestic labor was in ensuring that my father could financially provide for us. I detailed my father's inability to acknowledge that his vocational success rested on the foundation of a well-kept and stable home. I also explained that while I deeply valued my father's financial contributions, what I longed for more was a consistently present and emotionally available father, something I believed his fixation on work had robbed me of. When I said this, I could see my dad begin to weep in his chair. A wave of shock and confusion swept across his face. Seemingly, he had never stopped to consider that maybe I would have traded reduced economic prosperity, fewer video games, fewer TVs, and fewer extravagant meals for more time getting to know him. And that disconnect is where the problem of embarrassing men begins. White patriarchal capitalism encourages men to invest all of—
Is he mixed? Is he black? I noticed that he has a lot of black art. He is a black person on his shirt. I don't know if it's Biggie or somebody else. I can't tell. And then he had another one before. But he doesn't look very like white to me. But I thought he was maybe Hispanic or something. Or But it's interesting.
Of their self-worth and personal identity in their roles as laborers. For centuries, wealthy white male elites cultivated a culture that constantly told lower-class men their only value came from what they produced for capitalists. My father never rejected this idea. One of his favorite phrases was, "There's a real value in a hard day's work," a sentiment I now recognize as little more than a regurgitated capitalist piece of propaganda.
True.
As a result of my father's unquestioned false consciousness, he consistently failed decade after decade to develop a sense of personal identity separate from what he produced as a worker. The problem with tying your sense of self to labor is that jobs come and go, and capitalist loyalty is virtually non-existent. So if your identity is your labor, you can imagine the crisis that is bound to occur when you lose your job, or in my father's case, become too disabled to work any longer. Because of this cultural pressure, men rarely take the time to explore who they actually are.
Hold on. Chat said, guessing someone's race is such an American thing to do? You mean because like you might live in Europe where everyone's segregated and super racist, but you guys never want to talk about it because you want to pretend you're liberated and better than Americans? Or do you maybe it's because we're trying to figure out how his lived experience might have changed in court systems, or how his parents were perceived, or how his dad made money, or maybe he's trying to figure out like what does he know? Okay, so you can, you know what I mean? Just
are outside of work. This reminds me of a question Toni Morrison once asked notorious alleged sex pest Charlie Rose about whiteness. Without your whiteness, who are you? Are you any good?
Hi, vegan gays in the chat. Hi, we're just rushing through this video to get ready for the collaboration. Collaboration in a few minutes, girls.
In the same sense, my father had never taken the time to ask himself who he was without his job. What kind of a man was he apart from his work? Was he a good husband, friend, father, or brother? He never asked himself those questions because this society tells men that so long as they are good workers, those other things do not matter.
See, they're like in my chat saying American Cope, like drone strike kids. You don't care about those kids, bro, because you just came in here in a bubble that's trying to deconstruct that American perspective. We're trying to hold America to a better standard, right? Not choosing where we grew up or how we lived, but here you are attacking the same people that are fighting against that American framework. You don't care about those kids. You just use them as like talking points in your battle against a streamer that you don't even know. Good job.
But in that moment, as my father sat across from me in court, he realized too late that who he was outside of work did matter, at least to the people closest to him. Unfortunately, he was also realizing that who he was outside of those financial contributions was not all that impressive. The fact of the matter is this. When the exigencies of World War II completed the erosion of the dividing line between the domestic sphere and the labor market for women, men found themselves in a peculiar position. Women's financial independence had ensured a certain psychological dependency for men, catalyzed by changing gender dynamics. In other words, women's financial liberation had brought about men's psychological captivity. Unfortunately, so many of us men raised by baby boomers and Generation X parents were scarcely given the tools of self-discovery necessary to pivot alongside the culture. So many of us now wallow in self-pity, bouncing from one mother figure to the next, desperately pleading in vain for a return to the familiar social landscape our parents psychologically prepared us for. I know this to be true because I watched it happen to my own father when my mom went back to school in her mid-40s to pursue her passion for becoming a nail technician. My father constantly undermined her calling, dismissing her work as a distraction. Every attempt my mom made to become self-sufficient, my father undermined and sabotaged. From her venture as a deli owner to her time as a nail technician, because he knew her success would mean the collapse of his own sense of self. So here we are, a generation of men unwilling and unable to explore who they are, paralyzed by the fear that if we look in the mirror for too long, we will realize not only that we do not like what we see, but that we scarcely are prepared to fix it. Instead, we make our apathetic nihilism into a personality trait because that choice saves us from doing the hard work of searching inward and asking ourselves who we want to be in this world. We turn instead to the emotionally stunted men of the manosphere who have found a loophole. They have turned our apathy into a business, allowing us to cling to traditional gendered expectations while offering no real path forward. Leeches in the truest sense. So yes, men are embarrassing, because there is nothing more embarrassing than someone who refuses to truly know themselves.
Oh, that last line though. Burn. Oh, sorry, I know his dad's dead, but like, burn. Okay. Sorry, I talked shit at the beginning, you know what I mean? But still, I feel a way about him rising to popularity. I think it's like he's writing really well and he's being packaged really well. I think it will be very hard for him to contend with the possible virality that's heading his way, but word! I like it. I'm going to link the video in the chat. Damn, I wish we had time to watch his second video, honestly. Let me link it, though. Let me link it. Hold on. I will say I want to know more about him. I would like to hear more about him, see if I'm missing a lot, if I'm missing something. But, oh, man. Yeah. Oh, I hope he can handle any virality that heads his way, because it can be really difficult to. He already got some pushback, which I wanted, but I don't know if it's good pushback. That's the thing. And so I wanted to watch it with you guys. So I'll just keep it on my saved and we'll get to it when we can. Who knows? Maybe we'll have enough spoons after the collab. But if we don't, we can talk about it on Monday. Because I want to see how other men are reacting to his masculinity can't be healthy thing. But let me just say this, okay? When we talk about like needing men or feminism or not being mean to boys, no one in a gender deconstructionist bubble is ever trying to reduce men down to their gender. We're always trying to say you're more than your gender, but you can't be more than your gender under patriarchy, because all you are is your gender under patriarchy. So as long as you uphold patriarchy, you are nothing but a man. And like he said, embarrassing. So do with that what you will. And I wish us all the best on our deconstruction journeys. I would love for you to be more than your gender. And that starts with dismantling patriarchy.